Okay, welcome to another edition of this yet unnamed conversation between my mom and I, Myrna Selzler Park, and Liam Park. We're talking about ADHD and the way it affects our lives and our businesses. And I think today we were planning on touching on rejection sensitivity specifically because that was the topic that came up in the last two conversations a couple of times. You said you wanted to dedicate a little more time to.
I never even knew that existed. So define what rejection sensitivity is. I have no idea. Sounds like a good thing.
Yeah, like one of the common symptoms of ADHD that's quite hard for a lot of people to manage is called rejection sensitive dysphoria. So it's like, I should have looked up a proper definition before this. Like I know, but
I want a colloquial definition because that'll resonate more with me than a formal definition.
Okay.
Or give me an example because that would be even better.
So, well, rejection sensitive dysphoria is like a lot of people with ADHD feel they're overwhelmed by feelings of rejection that come from perceived social cues. They're not always real social cues, or they're often exaggerated social cues. In a meeting I had yesterday with Coach Dan Duncan, he was talking about a client he has who felt like his friends didn't like him, didn't want him around. And so like in an ADHD person, a lot of things manifest as like 0 or 10.
Oh, okay.
And relationships are the same way. And so if someone sort of, you're in a conversation and like someone like, well, they pick up their phone. An ADHD person's mind may go a mile a minute suddenly saying, well, this person doesn't give a they don't care about me at all. Like, how could they be so rude to just tune me out? Like, I thought we were here together. And that might not even be a conscious thing, but subconsciously they might suddenly feel like, oh, this person doesn't really care about me. Or, I think often like, just like my roommate keeps walking and talking.
And talking. Hi, Nils.
Yeah. I'll cut that maybe. So I think it also affects a lot of people with ADHD in relationships too, because it is these perceived rejections, not just like actual rejections. But when people perceive rejection, they'll like reject themselves first or reject other people as like a defense mechanism. Mm-hmm. So, maybe you have a new partner and they don't like something you do and they comment about it. For an ADHD person, it's more likely for them to like extrapolate from this one inconvenience that your whole life is an inconvenience to that person, and that you just shouldn't even like bother trying to make it work, because obviously if that one thing's a problem, it's all going to fall apart.
Oh, so there's big generalizations, and from the small, it immediately goes to the big, to the dramatic.
That's how I see it happening. Like, I don't know if that's what's like officially described in the definitions of it, but that's how I've experienced it and how I've witnessed it in other people.
So what would be an experience that you've had that's been a really big dysphoria like this, like this rejection syndrome thing?
I can't think of specific ones, but I know that in the past, like Kitty's my wife.
Yeah.
When we were younger, we've been together like 7 years. We were together. I would, maybe she'd be having a bad day just because like she gets migraines, she gets bloating, she experiences her own life, her own way, in a way that I don't experience. But I would sometimes see that like frown on her face, that pain in her brow, and immediately assume I messed up. I don't know what I did. So maybe it's because I made a big mess of the house, because I know like if I see she's got a headache and she's cleaning my mess, well, I just see her cleaning my mess, and then I would feel like crap. And then because I feel like crap, she would feel like crap, and it would be this vicious cycle down to the bottom. We've gotten much better at avoiding that cycle now. Mm-hmm. But that's how it commonly presented for me in a way I can remember.
Okay. What about, hey, you know what? When you were a little kid going to kindergarten,
Yeah.
I wonder if you had it even then. Like when you'd sit in circle time and the teacher would read the storybook. And if the storybook wasn't lined up so that you could see it, you would cry. You would leave the circle and cry because you felt like, I wonder if you felt like the teacher wasn't paying enough attention to you and you were feeling
Yeah,
rejected by the teacher.
that sounds plausible.
Wow. If I'd have only known then.
Yeah, it's interesting. And even like I've read Gabor Mate's I've read 80% of Gabor Mate's book Scattered Minds.
Pretty good.
And in the start of it, he makes the case that a lot of ADHD may come from perceived rejections, sort of. Like,
So the perceived rejection leads to the ADHD instead of the ADHD leading to the perceived rejection?
I don't know, like I don't know, I don't think he's making any like strong assertion of like what causes ADHD. There's a lot of indications that it seems to be largely a genetic thing, but he suggests that like there are factors within gestation, those first 9 months of pregnancy, and then the first 9 months of being alive in the world, roughly, or even like 2 years,
Yeah.
where like critical experiences shape your mind. So
Mhm.
like we know that smoke, if your mom was a smoker, you're more likely to have ADHD. If there are other factors like that, but Gabor Mate sort of makes the case that if your mom is sort of emotionally distant and like super stressed, then you'll be more likely to have ADHD because like babies before they can speak, they play these emotional conversation games where they're like laughing and then like looking scared and they just like move their face and that's how they speak. And the moms sort of like mirror that back in a healthy relationship. But if mom is going through a lot of stress, she might put on a mask where she can't reflect those emotions back. And babies are smart. They don't want to upset their parents. And so eventually the baby starts to mask its own emotions and sort of like internalizes this unspoken belief that like emotional reactions and rejections are tied together.
Well, again, it's really interesting. And I don't know if you know this, but right after you were born and for the first year of your life pretty well, I had pneumonia. I don't remember the first year of your life except a projectile vomiting into my face. And so I wonder, because I had pneumonia and I was so exhausted and, the coffee and it I was just sick for almost a year with it. I wonder if that influenced your maybe predisposition towards ADHD, just because I'm sure I had a 2-year-old and I had pneumonia and I had a brand new baby that did not like milk and had bad skin, like a rashy skin, like, I wonder if that didn't influence it.
Yeah, it's possible. And like, yeah, to be officially diagnosed ADHD, you need to have it for life. But I think Gabor Mate makes a pretty decent case that those first couple years of life do play a role in, if not whether you have ADHD, certainly the severity of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I got it that severe, but that's, if we want to explore what does rejection sensitivity look like, that's another part of it. Like, I don't even know if this counts, but I sort of think it does, is like fear of action. Like, I know that I coach people and they get a lot of benefit. And I know there are things that I could do to help drum up more business, post regularly. And I know theoretically, if I made a habit of posting, I would get the practice and I would feel more comfortable writing. I would feel more comfortable putting myself out there. But there seems to be this wall of insecurity that I don't know where it comes from. It's like
it's completely illegitimate, but
and it's pre-conscious. It's like I'm not thinking like, oh, what if some horrible person comments on my stuff? But I don't put it out there because there is a little piece of me that is
But it's sort of like, to me, it's like artists and musicians and writers, they're making themselves more vulnerable. Would it be easier for you if you, for example, were marketing a product that you believed in, that's external, so that if they said, well, I don't like the product, well, you go, well, you don't like the product, but I'm still wonderful. I wonder if that would make a difference, because really and truly, like, I've been in sales for 40 years now, and the hardest thing to sell is yourself. So
Yeah.
not only if you've got this, rejection sensitivity disorder, and you're selling the hardest thing that there is to sell, which is yourself, like, you got it's a pretty steep hill to be climbing here. So what do you do about it then? Given you've chosen this path,
Yeah.
we know it's a steep hill. And we talked about some of the things that I did is I set up systems, like the dramatic systems: do it or starve to death, do it or starve to death. So then I had to do it, right?
Yeah.
So what could you do that would have a dramatic enough impact that would compel you into action?
I am trying to figure that out still. I think one of the things you brought up that makes a difference that I'm trying to figure out still is about the values, like making sure you do something that's aligned with your integrity.
Yes.
And I think that's, see, can you hear my cat playing with that weird thing in the background?
Yeah, we sure can.
Just go take that away. Yeah, so doing things that are aligned with
But this is aligned with your values. So this is
it
aligned.
is, but I know there's so many layers to it. And like, so one of the things is you want to do copywriting in such a way that drives people to work with you. You want to write in a way that persuades them to believe that you're worth working with. And a lot of the approaches that
Yeah.
hypercat, a lot of the approaches that you find online, like, they do make sense and they do work, but there's this, I don't know, like, I don't want to, it's a little dramatic to say,
Make
but
it
I'm
dramatic, because for the purposes of illustration, make it dramatic.
it feels slimy.
Oh, okay. And I disagree with you, not the slimy part. I disagree with you that you have to write copy to convince people.
Yeah.
My belief is if you can write copy so that people get to know, like, and trust you, they will be convinced by themselves. You don't need to convince them, because a man convinced against his will remains of the same opinion still. So it's about just leading them. And eventually they'll figure it out for themselves, because I don't want any resistance when I'm trying to sell someone something.
Yeah, and I think so that's something I'm working through, because it's sort of I think you're right, but it's so easy to be, if you're online, you're just inundated with information, all these conflicting opinions and strategies. It's like, this is the way to get clients. This is the way to get this.
But you need to just pick two that are going to work for you and ignore the rest. Okay, listen to what I learned last week. Okay. I was listening to a 26-minute YouTube video. It was Atomic Habits by James Cleary. And one of the things he talked about in there was some fellow, I think it was Warren Buffett's pilot, talking to Warren Buffett. And Warren Buffett said, write down the 25 things that you want to do in your life. So the pilot goes ahead and does that. And then Warren Buffett says, pick the top 5. So when I finally figured out, do the math, that's the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle. And he said, do the top 5 and ignore the other 20. Just ignore the other 20. Do the top 5 to the exclusion of all others. And so I made myself write my list. I didn't even get to 25, and the top 5 bubbled up. And I'm pretty clear about my top 5 now. And again, so in terms of marketing, like, you can go so many different directions. You need to pick like 2 ways.
Yeah.
And I've done communication workshops for 20 years. Everybody needs a communication workshop, but if everybody needs a communication work and everybody's my client, how do I market to everybody? I had to pick a niche. I just narrow it down as to who would be my clients within that communication workshop space. So that would be sort of in terms of, and then the rejection sensitivity, the more you get known in that space, the less rejection you'll feel because you get more street cred, right? You get more known in that space.
Yeah.
How did that sound? I sound just like a man going immediately to solution.
Yeah. Well, like it's a good solution, but then indecision is another part of ADHD.
We talked about indecision last week. Indecision
We-
is just fear. You're just pretending to be undecided. You really know.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Oh,
I
come
think
on. Let's go with that. What's the indecision about?
I think I think there's internal, like, some beliefs I've created around myself, and that a lot of people with ADHD do, because, like,
Okay, I think
you know,
you're avoiding the question, but what's the belief?
but well, I mean, like, I'm sort of getting to it. It's like, I think I am. Rephrase the question.
I don't even know what the question was. I have ADHD. But basically, what's your indecision? Indecision is just, pardon me, a bullshit way to hide behind fear of stating your truth,
Yeah.
stating what
I
you
think
believe, stating what you are willing to do, saying hard things that other people may not want to hear. That's all indecision is in my mind at this moment in time.
Yeah.
So,
I think a hurdle builds in the mind, like a callus that comes from, like, drumming is my thing. I love drumming. Why wouldn't I do this? Of course I could do this. People do this. I'm going to do it. And then, it falls apart and it's like, no, you know what? I do need to learn, guitar, because the guitarist can play the actual music that leads the band. And I was like, no, I need to write. Oh no, I need to learn to manage musicians, because you got to manage yourself. It's like, oh no, I need to make electronic music, because that actually makes people dance. Like, oh no, I need to make art, because I'm too critical of myself when I make music. Oh no, I need to do whatever, because whatever. And so, like, if
okay,
you
so
try,
let's just take that though, because you're a pretty darn good cook.
yeah,
So why does that same pattern of behavior not extend to cooking? Oh, I can't possibly cook dinner because I'm not quite good enough. I can't possibly make bagels because I'm not quite good enough. I can't possibly make all those fermented things you make because I'm not quite good enough. Somehow you're good enough in that space. Could you not generalize saying I'm good enough in that space? I'm good enough in this space. It's called flip back, flip up. It's a
yeah,
psychological term.
that's probably a really valuable tool for me to reflect on, because
No, it's
yeah,
not to reflect
cooking,
on, to actually freaking do.
yeah, but when that comes up, to not let myself compare what I'm doing now to past experiences with other crafts that didn't work, but to compare it with cooking,
This,
because yeah,
with that, you compare with the successes, you compare with the moments in time where you can recapture the energy, the feeling, the knowingness that you had when you did it right.
yeah, that
Pull
that
that
seems
forward.
smarter, because yeah, cooking, why does it work? It works because I use quality ingredients. um
You've got a
because I've
quality coaching program.
yeah, yep, and I've practiced a lot with
And you've
cooking.
practiced a lot with coaching.
Yeah. um I don't hold cooking as sacred, because I know if a meal sucks, then there's always going to be two more that day. And
But isn't it not sacred? Like if I'm working with a client and I say something and later I have some remorse about saying it, or I wasn't clear enough, or I think I sent them the wrong direction, can I not just pick up the phone and say, hey, I've been rethinking this. Could we look at it through this lens now? And that
yeah,
doesn't diminish me, because I made the best comment I could with the information I had, the insight I had at that moment in time. And granted, I don't want to do that all the time, but people allow others grace.
yeah,
And again, like, really, no, one of my questions to myself is, is blood spurting? Is somebody going to die if I do this just not quite perfect? The answer is pretty much always no. Nobody is going to die. So therefore, why would I worry too much? I can't worry too much about it. I can't take so much control of it. Nobody is going to die. Like, literally, I used to get 7 phone calls, 20 phone calls an hour from real estate agents with problems. And my first thought is blood spurting. No blood spurting? Okay, we'll work on this. If blood spurting, and we may work on this later, but if blood spurting, we'll work on it now. When
Yeah.
you'd fall and hurt yourself, is blood spurting? That's a skin knee. It's drizzling out. I don't care. We'll be fine. Like no blood is spurting. So no blood spurts when we make decisions, but blood oozes out over a really long period of time. There's this really big puddle on the floor and you will die eventually. The death of indecision. Like to me, I think that's it. The pain of indecision, the fear of not making a decision pushes me away from that dysphoria, that rejection, like the fear of dying unfulfilled, the fear of not having done all that I'm good at because I was scared is more scary than doing the scary thing.
So theoretically, I'm with you. And practically, I've been with you multiple times through my life. But somehow when I'm trying something new, that motivator doesn't come for me. So like, how have you been able to keep that top of mind for yourself?
I guess I grew up less advantaged than you did, which is why you grew up more advantaged, because I grew up far less advantaged. But even now, I'm not in a position of, to worry. Like, I'm older, I've saved my money and all that sort of thing. But the fear of living an unfulfilled life, the fear of not, like one of my roles in my life, I think is to reflect people's greatness. So I can't reflect people's greatness if I'm busy hiding underneath a bushel.
So I agree, and I feel that, but I'm just wondering, like, was there a turning point that made that crystal clear for you? Like, because maybe I think
part of it, I think will make it crystal clear for you. This is, you can edit this if you like, but I think that when you become a father, you will go, holy smokes, I have a whole bunch more responsibility for another life. I had better, like, no holds barred. I have just got to move ahead because I cannot let this little person down.
Yeah.
I think, but again, given that I'm pretty sure that's what'll happen to you, why don't you let it happen sooner?
Yeah. I think that's true. And it's just sort of trying to keep in mind that, like, because that's another part of ADHD is like, if things aren't actively a part of your life, like they're not in front of you, it's easy to forget about them. And so like people who don't exist yet, I can easily forget about a person who doesn't exist yet. Or like what I was gonna say, I think might be one of the things that would help me is like, also your generation grew up with probably a higher mortality rate. It was more likely that you saw people die. I've had a few friends die, but not many, and none who were really close to me.
And you haven't had, well, you've had your grandparents on your dad's side. You lost both of them. But you kind of expected that, I guess.
Yeah, and they weren't really the most vital people for quite a while anyways. So it was like, I didn't have a deep relationship with them. I liked them. I liked their cookies, like, but I didn't really, they didn't seem to like try to get on my level. I didn't really try to get on their level. There was just sort of this like mutual respect of family more than like a deep intimacy.
Okay, so like I've gone through some things. Like, did you see life and death when I got the diagnosis of cancer? Did that make you reflect at all on your mortality?
Yeah, like I still do reflect on it, but I don't know why it doesn't hit me with more impact. So yeah, like
because it didn't hit me with that much impact. I didn't hit me with more impact because I did. Again, I didn't really want to own it per se.
Yeah, but even like dad rolling his motorbike over, right? Like I did have to grapple with that at the time. Like he lived, but it was, there was some scare there. Even like today, just was on the phone with Denny, who seems healthy and fine and wonderful, but he's just so childish and playful. Like I was actually hit after our call, just feeling sad that, like, knowing that he is mortal, because he's got to be
Early 70s. Don't go too far. He's just early
Okay.
70s. Yeah.
Early 70s, but he's had his fair share of health issues over his life. He
Yes.
seems vital now. But it's kind of sad knowing that I probably won't be able to give him a call anytime.
Yeah.
And but I don't know
How to translate that into action for you.
yeah.
But how would you feel though? I guess, how do you feel knowing that if you don't take action, there are people whose lives you could have touched and made better, and you haven't because of your own wall that we talked about at the very beginning of this conversation? I feel social responsibility. I feel responsibility to that for some silly reason.
I think that's a good thing, and I think I'm developing that feeling. I think that's another one of these generational things, like the previous generation, baby boomers, throwing down the system. It's not about responsibilities, it's about rights and fun and enjoyment, right?
Yeah, but I'm part of that thing, and I'm not. Yeah.
I know, like, that's not like the universal value of the generation, but that's like, the sloganeering values of the generation. It might not be embodied, but it's sort of like the way we were told we could sort of do whatever we want made it easy to not want to do responsible things.
Or to do anything, because I want to talk about this another time, is the power of constraints.
Yeah.
You had no constraints. So therefore, it's just a mumbo jumbo, especially with somebody with ADHD.
And like in our culture, we have no responsibility, like not none, but even like
the cows don't need to get milked every morning.
Yeah, cows don't need to get milked. Garden doesn't need to get weeded. Like I have a garden almost because of that. It's like to force some responsibility into my life, because it's easy to float by without it, but it's not. It's not good. It's not enjoyable. I've come to really appreciate responsibility, but if sort of like during critical years, that was sort of like, I don't know, flexible. Responsibility wasn't communicated about as a virtue as enormously as it has been in previous generations.
And I think it's because part of it is because we take it for granted. We see the world through our own lenses. So I saw the lens through my responsibility lens, and I assumed everybody else, naively, I assumed the other people saw it the same way. We're coming up to just over 30 minutes. So I don't think we've addressed this thoroughly enough. We may need to revisit this after we've thought about it some more. Yeah. And maybe you can come back with another story about how you've done it or what you've done to sabotage yourself.
Yeah, I got an idea percolating for something to get me out of my comfort zone and just doing it.
Okay, so can we talk about that next week? Or is that too soon?
It would be stupid if I put it off longer than a week.
Okay, then that's, I guess, the topic for next week is to how you've overcome rejection, sensitivity, dysphoria. That's what we're talking about. Okay. All right. So it's Myrna Selzler Park and Liam Danger Park signing off on whatever this podcast is. We'll name it soon.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Am I actually leaving today, or are you going to end the recording?
I'm just going to end it.